And we are here on a weekly moment to talk about flow. So to talk about the benefits of flow for us as agents of change, as modern leaders, but also flow a little bit. I'm just going to nudge it out a little bit to talk about flow in terms of the human system as well, the more kind of the social system, for those of us that are working in the world of design and delivery around transformation. So that's what we're going to be doing today. How many people are kind of familiar with flow? It's really, yeah, great. Awesome. Yeah, maybe not. I guess the key thing is, you know, we've more often than not, we all understand and have been in moments of flow. And I love this lovely quote by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, which is probably not a very good pronunciation, but there you go. That's one thing that you can do is practice the godfather of flow. And this beautiful quote is: the best moments in our lives are not the passive, relaxing times, but the best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to a limit, a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So there's a lot in there: purpose, meaning, motivation, but most importantly, you can see that there's like a Goldilocks zone. And when you think about flow, the zone is what people talk about, isn't it? It's like getting into the zone. Have we been into the zone? And if we've been, you know, reading a book, and you start reading a book and it's so damn good that you just keep reading it, and then you look at the time and you go, what, an hour? But I thought it was just 20 minutes. That's flow, right? When you're running and all of a sudden you get all of those wonderful, you know, chemicals, cortisone and dopamine are just releasing throughout your body. Your chemistry changes when you're running or you're doing some sort of sports, and all of a sudden you just, you know, your mind and your body are all in sync and everything's just beautiful. And that's in the zone. That's flow. So we're going to be talking about all of these things today. But what I do want to do is take it back to basics. And I know that there are some of us that are well versed in flow, but some of us are, as I saw Tom go, I'm not too sure. I've kind of heard about it, but I don't really know what it's all about, Mel. The simplest way to understand flow is to see it as an optimum division between two things: the level of complexity, the challenge, the real kind of skill, versus the difficulty versus the skill of it. So if we're thinking about how hard it is, we're thinking about how complex it is, we're thinking about the level of complexity versus we're thinking about how much skill we've got in order to achieve or to reach that particular goal of difficulty, that challenge. So it's how hard it is versus the skill that makes it easy or easier. So how hard is this challenge? How complex is this challenge? And how prepared am I and how capable am I in terms of skill in order to deliver and meet that challenge? There are some other things. This is the simplest way to think about it. There are some other things that come into play, as you can see, increasing time along the bottom there. So it's not just about skill in terms of capability and knowledge and experience, but it might be how much time we've got for it. So it's really thinking about the conditions. It's setting up the conditions. And if we get to that point of it's absolutely the right challenge, the right level of difficulty to meet my own capability and skill level, then what we've got is what's called optimum flow, kind of like a Goldilocks zone. And that means that we've got the conditions to enter into a flow state. Now, as soon as we say that, you're thinking about teams, you're thinking about leadership, you're thinking about change and transformation, you're thinking about adoption rates and bringing people on that journey with you. Or more often than not, we're trying to bring them on a journey of a new technology, and we're delivering Office 365 and we're deploying it all, and you know, that beautiful new features and functions around Office 365 that we've got there for everybody to use. But we need to understand the current level of competency and skill and experience that people have got and are using habitually, their rituals, versus, you know, how many of these features are we sharing with them? Are we sharing too much with them? So we want to just start thinking about how we can bring this concept of how difficult and how big and complex is the challenge versus really having an awareness of the experience, the capability, and the current skill of the humans within the system. But not just that, but also their rituals and their habits. What are they currently doing habitually? What are their rituals? So thinking about that in terms of that, you know, that kind of area of how easy it is. Now, this slide here, I think, is a really important one for us to have a quick look at, because sometimes we get it wrong. And especially in change and transformation, oh boy, do we get it wrong a lot of the time. And the reason why we get it wrong is because, you know, sometimes it's really good reasons. It's because, you know, we really are, we believe in this and we really want to bring people on the journey of it. And we know exactly what the vision is, but they might not necessarily know what the vision is. So we can kind of, you know, get this sense of anxiety. We can kind of stress people out just because we're giving them a little bit too much too soon. So there's a breaking point with the level of challenge and the complexity. And we need to really think about this. We need to think about it. Now, if there are levels of worry and anxiety around change and transformation, one of the questions we need to be asking ourselves is this: are we giving a little bit too much? Is there not enough clarity? Do we need to simplify a little bit of this challenge, a little bit of the complexity or difficulty around this? And it might be language, it might be the narrative and the story we're telling. It might not necessarily just be around skill level. Equally, what we might be seeing in the system is we might be seeing things like people leaning out of change and transformation. They're kind of, you know, a little bit of kind of apathy, which is one of the words that is here on the screen, or even bored with it. And what that might be is, oh my goodness, you know, maybe what we're doing is we're just giving too little over a too long a period of time. Maybe people are up for more. Maybe people can cope with more. It is not for us to assume what necessarily is right for people. It's how have we gathered the right data, the right observational data to understand these things with people. It's really important. Jane, you've popped your hand up. I'm going to come straight to you.
Yeah, it's just got me thinking about some of the work that I do in design thinking as well, and about sitting with tension, because there is something about, because there's this balance of comfortable uncomfortableness. Like there is moments and there are moments of tension, and usually when there's moments of tension, something brilliant and beautiful is going to happen. So like, don't always pull away from it. Is kind of like just bringing that to, just because you're seeing something that's uncomfortable or you're in something that's uncomfortable, don't just pull away from it. So all of these things, it's that balance, isn't it? Like everything that you were saying, I was like, yeah, actually, like being intentional, understanding where things are at, but like, what's our goal here? Are we moving forward? What can we do? So it's that. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to raise that point of like, don't just go, oh, I've got to change, I've got to do something different. There's something happening here. Actually, when something's happening, something magical can transform the other side.
Absolutely. Now, it's interesting what Jane's just said there, and I don't know whether that resonates with other people on the call today. But if we go back to this slide, you know, that swim lane in the middle, that optimum flow, that's not just one line. That's a stream, right? That's a spectrum in and of itself. And what Jane really is alluding to there is, if we look at the top end of that optimum flow, that is in and of itself a liminal space for innovation and change, right? It's still in the zone, but actually what it is, it's just at the top end. We haven't broken people, but we're in that beautiful top end of the spectrum, which is really important. And I'll come on to that a little bit later, actually. And really good call and lovely observation there, Jane. When we're thinking about flow, there's a few elements that would be really good for us to kind of get our head around, especially as practitioners of change and transformation. This kind of the simplest thing that we've just talked about, which is how genuinely clear are we of the balance between skill and challenge? from the human system. So thinking about what change and transformation we are designing, what vision and moonshot we want to bring people on the journey towards, what purpose is around the change and transformation. Do we genuinely have the right data around this balance between skill and challenge? That's really important. Equally, clarity, because a lot of the time when you talk about flow, everybody understands and is clear about the rules on how to win the game. So I understand what achievement looks like. I understand what success looks like, not on an organizational level, but for myself. And Tom, you know, I talk about this quite a lot, is allowing people the space to design their future self. You know, and if people have got the space to design who they are becoming as part of all of this, then you are giving them optimal conditions for themselves to enter into flow. Really, really important. I'm not going to go through each one of these because I'll share the slides with everybody upon request at the end of today. But I really got, you know, this is I'm giving you flavors of flow here rather than going deeply into one particular thing. So I've got a lot of things to share with us. But there is this important element on point 4 here, sense of control. You know, just because we are the change agents of change and transformation doesn't give us the right to be in control. When it comes to change itself, we are all in control. I was on a conference yesterday. I was a speaker at a conference yesterday, and somebody said something that really resonated with me. They said that good leadership is not a label, it's a space. Wow, man, I just thought that was powerful. And it directly relates to flow. You know, it's giving people the space to be in control and lead themselves as well. It's so incredibly important for us to recognize that. There is one thing that I'm just going to also pick up on before I continue on, which is the final element that's mentioned in this slide, which is the autotelic quality. And autotelic is basically when we're enjoying something, when we're doing it, we are enjoying it. And that is something that is really important for us in the world of design and delivery of transformation and change to be considering. It doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to be, you know, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, all of that VUCA stuff that everybody talks about on LinkedIn and in social media. We can support people to enjoy the doing of change, the journey of change, and not just trying to get everybody to, you know, believe in the hope of the end of it, because there is no end for it. So autotelic quality is a very important element of flow, which is how do we, as agents of change and leaders of transformation, create conditions that support positivity, that support this sense of feeling good while we're having a go at it, while we're doing it. And there's lots in there. There's positive psychology, positive intelligence, PQ, there's reward, recognition, you know, all of this kind of stuff. So just thinking about how we might be able to help people to feel good while they're doing it, and not necessarily have this win-lose element, you know, right or wrong element, is just have a go and let's just see where it goes. This is really interesting as well. You know, it's just getting that sense of feeling good as well. Listen, I'm an advocate of flow. I love it. I am always trying to optimize conditions for myself to get into flow. So benefits of flow, man, you know what? I'm there. You got me. It is just so beautiful if we start to become a little bit more design focused, conscious about getting into flow ourselves as modern leaders, and then starting to think about how we can support others in journeys of change and transformation to also enter into moments of flow states, then boy, you know, we are really shifting the needle, because the benefits are absolutely incredible. Sense of well-being. The sense of well-being when you are in flow is phenomenal, because it releases chemicals in the body, like, you know, dopamine, like all of the other, you know, norepinephrine and cortisol, etc., etc. We increase our level of capability. those of you that listen to me a lot will know that I have some of my little melisms. They call them melisms, my little sayings. Your brain can't have more than one thought at any given moment. So if you're thinking about that, if you're thinking creatively, then you know that you are going to be able to innovate. You're in that state that you're ready for design and innovation. But if you're anxious and you're worrying and you're fearful of something, you have blocked off the ability to be creative, to innovate, to design, to shift. So creativity is something that really, really comes out of flow states. We just all of a sudden, you know, God, I'm at one with the universe. Mel, I can just see the whole future here. And then you come out of flow state and you think, I've got it. And then you start writing it down on a piece of paper and you're kind of going, oh, dear God in heaven, what? I don't even know where to start. But that is really key, right? You just want to think about, you know, creativity as being one of those beautiful things that comes out of it. There's lots more that comes out of the benefits of flow. But certainly in terms of change and transformation, increased creativity, increased propensity to lean in, and also increased productivity. Those are two things, you know, aside from everything else that's on this slide, that's really important. And look what I've just popped on the bottom. You can achieve more with less. You actually can. If we can encourage moments of flow within change and transformation work, we are not only ourselves, but others around us able to achieve more with less. If you want to know more, a little bit more about that and the benefits of flow, do let me know and I will more than happily send some stuff through to you. I talked about Mihaly at the beginning. Mihaly was the individual that created flow, and just coming out of the Second World War period, he created and he worked on multiple research experiments to come up with what he called flow. And the reason why he called it flow was, as he was conducting interviews with people, when they were describing this state, this mental state, they said, God, it's like the flow of a river. It's like water flowing. So that's why he called this mental state flow. But in more recent years, the practice of Mihaly, his concepts and his theories have also been taken to the next level. And they've been taken to the next level by different individuals, but one individual in particular, Stephen Kotler, and his work on the Flow Collective in America is sublime, very scientifically driven, and really starting to bring in neuroscience, you know, modern day emerging neuroscience into the concept of flow. And you know what? Stephen Kotler's on a mission. Stephen Kotler is on a mission to document, to really understand the processes so that we can consciously get ourselves into flow, and not just individually, but collectively. And it's so incredibly important. So he talks about 4 kind of characteristics of flow in terms of this work that he's been doing. That whole sense of what I'm doing, as well as my sensory awareness, they just become one. We lose this sense of self. What does that mean? Do you know, just to put that into English, I'm not scared. You know, I might have self-esteem worries or imposter syndrome over there, but when I'm in flow, man, it's gone. It's gone, just vanishes. So there's these, again, benefits of flow, which are really important for us to recognize. He talks about 4 triggers to get into flow. He talks about these 4 triggers here: creativity, environment, psychology, and social. In these slides, what I've done is, because there's so much that I want to share with you all this morning in terms of flavors of flow, I've put a lot more depth behind each one of these 4 triggers in the slides. But equally, can you see these 4 words here? So those of you that are in the world of change and transformation, you're transformational leaders, you're responsible for designing and delivery change and transformation in organizational systems. Have a look at that. Creativity, environment, psychology, and this sense of social, human social capital, community, belonging. Man, not only are they really important things for us to be supporting and designing into change and transformation, they are actually 4 of the top triggers that get people into flow. It's like a no-brainer. It's like a win-win. It's a double whammy. So thinking about how we can support others in their creativity, thinking about how we are able to support the conditions and the environment around people that can help people get into flow, thinking about triggers. Today, we're not talking about triggers, but I've got a full-blown session and masterclass that talks about triggers, because it's really important for us to understand what, when, how, and who triggers us either one way or the other outside of flow, into boredom or into worry and anxiety and stress. It's really important for us to understand triggers. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about triggers, then please also just pop that into the chat, and I'm more than happy to share some of our techniques and some of our thinking around triggers. But what I want to do now is I want to just talk to you a little bit about social, and just thinking about how we can set conditions for daily habits in ourselves to really create the conditions and environment around flow, but also this starts to edge us into how we can think about it for others. These things here are basic. And actually, do you know what? When it comes to attention management versus time management, when it comes to, genuinely optimizing our own leadership practice, and also the practice of how we design and deliver change and transformation, these things are key. I don't know about you, but reducing the number of daily decisions you need to make in a day is really important, because in the world we live in today, how many decisions are we making, right? I don't know, what am I going to wear? I don't know what I'm going to eat, all of these things. If there's a way that we can reduce some of these decisions that are not necessarily driven or pointing towards purpose or productivity, then we should be reducing them. Eliminating our unnecessary disruptions, thinking about travel, thinking about, do I need to travel in? Can I do it on Zoom? Thinking about, unnecessary disruptions inside your little virtual office. I was talking with a group of practitioners this morning, and a lovely lady called Kim said to me, "Oh my God, Mel, I have eliminated the unnecessary disruption of that damned mobile phone. I now leave it in the kitchen. I don't have it in my office all day. I leave it in the kitchen, and I go out for a cup of coffee, I go out and have my lunch there, and the phone is there, but it is not distracting me unnecessarily, and it's not interrupting anything, not my conversation, but my brain. I've just pushed it out." So thinking about that. Creating moments of control. Now, this is something that we don't necessarily bring into the world of change and transformation, but it is important for us to help people create safety and support around change, because it is a pretty icky world, right? When we're bringing change and transformation into a human system. So think about how we can give control back to the humans that are at the center of change, and just creating routines for them. So think about it for yourself first and foremost, and think about how we can work with other people. Gosh, how can we create little routines that will help us through some of this change and transformation? Super important. Obviously, the second one, reducing addictive stimuli. I think, you can Google that, can't you? And we all know that. I don't know. It's so, and it's really interesting because, this stuff, how you recognize this stuff, if you know that you need to do something important, but actually you go in, actually, just before I do that, I just need to put the washing out. Or you kind of go, oh, I'll do that tomorrow because I really want to watch another episode of Lost or something like that. That something else is in control and not you, because what you're doing is you're distracting. You're actually creating distraction. So there's a little bit of number 3 and number 4 happening here. So incredibly important. The final one I just want to touch on, because Jane, I'm going to come to you in a minute if you don't mind. I just want to go on to this flush the fear of neurochemistry, and then I'll come on to you. And I noticed that there's a few things in chat as well, so I'll have a quick look at those as well. So our neurochemistry, this is some of the most emergent work that Stephen Kotler is doing. And there are some other individuals out there. There's Vishen Lakhiani. You can go and have a look at some of his work. You can think about Wim Hof. If you haven't heard of Wim Hof or watched him on BBC yet, then, you know, there's the breath man, the ice man. The key thing here is our neurochemistry, the chemistry inside our body, also can create and hold fear. Not just thoughts in our brain. You know, fear and anxiety and worry isn't just thought stuff in our brain. It's also part of chemistry in our body. And there's some things that we can do to help release some of that chemistry of worry and stress and fear in our body. And and these are just some of the things that you can do here. So sauna, just going into a sauna and just releasing some of those things. Breath work. You can have cold showers in the morning. You can go for a quick 20-minute run. There's a really good technique which is called second wind around the afternoon. So it's, if you do your second wind in the afternoon, you take somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes out before you start your main afternoon session, which usually for deep work is between 3 and 5 o'clock. And you do a second wind 10 to 20 minutes beforehand. And what that does is it just builds up your energy level and you're ready to go again. So it's really important for you to think about that second wind as well. But, you know, simple breath work can help you here. What is interesting is that our body, more often than not, is in just a little bit too much of an acidic state. So, you know, you think about autoimmune disease, you think about inflammation, you think about all of that stuff. More often than not, we're a little bit more acidic than we should be as human beings. So all of this stuff here just brings us just adds a little bit of alkalinity into our brain, in particular things like ice baths. You can put your hands into just a bowl of water with some ice cubes in it, just for as long as you can do it. And if you do that repeatedly, you are already doing something tiny just to start to just bring the balance up on alkalinity. And as soon as there's less acidity in the neurochemistry of your body, oh my giddy aunt, then that means we're building resilience, chemical resilience. And that's so incredibly important. Flow as a state is also part of deep work. And that's something that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But before I do, Jane, just want to come back to you. And then as you're talking, if that's all right, I'm going to have a quick look at chat as well.
It was really good timing because I thought, oh, I'll give you a rest and I'll say something out there. But one of the things, I have a lot of these rituals on my list. I'm a daily cold shower person. Yeah, I do breath work. I do 6:30 a.m. yoga, all of those things. But one of the things that I've been putting into my rituals recently is around taking the time to pause between. Yeah. So particularly when you've done something big, just taking that moment to just pause and rest, because the thing about dopamine is we're constantly chasing a dopamine high, and we're constantly, and that's what gives us burnout, is that there's a thing about being in flow state, but the great thing about breath work, it brings you down and you're calm and you're in this relaxation mode, but actually there's a thing about like just taking that time to relish in that moment of what you've just had a call. Like that moment of pause might even just be 20 seconds to acknowledge it and then move on. Or for something bigger, it might be just something a bit more intentional and longer. But that pause time is something that I'm bringing into my practice.
Oh, I love that. And you're right. There's something. So this isn't necessarily getting into flow, but what you've just said there is really important, because if we think about sports and elite athletes, what you will notice is elite athletes do not train constantly and then head straight into race day or competition day. They always have a stop moment. And also when they're in the gym and they're practicing with their coach, when they're exercising, they also have stop moments. And the reason for that is the muscle has to grow you have to not be exercising in order for your muscle to grow in order for you then to go back into the next exercise and be able to progress and to build your speed up or your strength up or whatever it is. So when you think about your brain in exactly the same way, that is a little bit of another benefit that comes out of the stop practice as well, Jane, which is you're allowing your neural pathways just to take a rest and perhaps actually to just deepen a little bit. So thinking about stop can also allow us mentally to grow. And we've probably all got little, anecdotes around that as well. Super, super important for us. Those of you that haven't heard of Cal Newport, I do recommend that you have a look at his work. Cal Newport was really the individual that has brought the concept and the theory of flow into business and work. And he's called it deep work. Now, there are times where all of us need to work narrow. And what I mean by narrow is on one very specific thing for quite a bit of time. And oh my giddy aunt, does your limbic brain want to give you all of the distractions in the world not to do it? This is where you do want to just put the rubbish out or go and put the washing on and so on and so forth. But if you have a look at the deep work and you think about flow, really absolutely crucial is for us to ensure that we are thinking about getting into flow state when we need to do a deep piece of work. And for me at the moment, it's writing. And I can guarantee you, if I don't prepare myself and consciously think about going into a flow state for my periods of writing, 99% of the time, I'm not succeeding with it. I can't, it's just not there. It's just not flowing for me. I'm not even entering into a state of flow with it. It's so unnecessarily difficult for me because I haven't set up the conditions for it, for that deep work. So if you have deep work that you need to do, a project or a strategy paper that you need to do, or just some real deep ideation, it is important for you to really go and have a look at thinking about how you can set up the conditions for a flow state, or look at Cal Newport and some of the beautiful tricks of the trade that he puts into play in his work on deep work. Super, super important. The majority of us here on call today do work in the world of change and transformation within business. So we're not changing an individual. We are changing human systems, right? We are changing people. We are changing entire communities of humans. How do we do that? Where does that come into play when it comes to flow state? Well, I've sort of mentioned a few things at the beginning of today's session, but here I've got some additional things that we can look at, because there is this thing called group flow. Flow isn't just for you individually, and neither is it just for you in deep work. We can work together to get into flow as teams, as change teams. It's really, really cool. And these are 10 of the things that we can look at to get into deep flow. I think one of them, which is the very first one, is so incredibly important, which is shared goals, right? And by the way, when I'm talking about shared goals, I am not talking about the vision of the organization. I'll put that to one side. We're a team. We've got something to do. Are we absolutely clear on the purpose of what we're doing here today in this meeting together? That's what we mean by shared goals, being human about it and thinking about the here and the now and the this, not the that. That's what we're really talking about there. Number 3 is really important. This is talking about positive psychology. It is really, really vital for us, if we want to get into a state of group flow with a number of colleagues, is to really understand how we can be positive energizers and not negative energizers. So we've got to put ego aside. We've got to really think about how we can be positive and really think about some of the techniques that can add, as opposed to combat, progress. Add as opposed to combat progress. And a very, very simple one. I've just seen Emma, so really good to see you here on today's call. Emma, you've probably heard me say a million times in my sessions, don't say yes, but say yes and. It's that simple. There are so many tiny little techniques that we can put into our narrative and our language that support group flow. And so many more here in terms of, little techniques to get into group flow. Number 7, very interesting, equal participation. Now, we're not doing it today, but equal participation is something that is really important because it allows everybody to have share of voice. And there are some techniques that you can use here as well. I don't know whether anybody has heard of the concept of meeting circles, but meeting circles are fantastic because meeting circles are situations when you can do it physically and virtually, where one person speaks and it goes in the round. So everybody gets an opportunity to speak. Now, the daily stand-up in Agile is kind of a very, very basic form of circle meeting. But if you're doing, brainstorming work, it is beautiful for you to, at the beginning, just agree some of the themes that we might want to talk about today, and then put one theme, and you can vote on it. Just get people to vote on which one of the themes they want to work on. And then one person starts talking about that theme, and then you can go around the circle. So circle meetings are fantastic for equal share of voice and participation. And the other thing that is really good about circle meetings is it just annihilates hierarchy. It annihilates hierarchy. Everybody gets a voice. There is a little technique in it, which is this: you either participate if it's your turn, or you pause, which means you're going to come back after the next person, or you just pass. And it just keeps going in the round. So psychological safety is already designed into the concept of circle meetings. Again, if you'd like to know more about that, just let me know, and I can send some stuff through to you. In today's slides, because I am only talking about flavours of flow because it's such a broad subject, what I've also done is I've added some really, really, really good videos for you to have a look at. So there are links in the notes area of these slides, but there are also some videos for you to have a look at. And this is a great video where Stephen Kotler himself talks to the guys at Big Thinking of how to get into flow state, and he talks about some of the research that he does in the Flow Collective. So it's a really, really, really good, good video to watch. And not only that, guess what? There is a profiling tool that you can access for free using the link that I've got here to understand what your flow profile might be. So everything that we've talked about today, or things that you've seen on the screen that I might not have picked out. So all of this stuff, the majority of this stuff, is cited in this flow profile, and it is free for you to go and have a look at what your flow profile might look like. So this is a really good starting point for you to set the conditions for your own optimum flow leadership and flow practice. So super, super important. Jane's just popped in into the chat binaural beats to support different brain states as well. Yeah, you're absolutely. We have alpha, beta, theta, delta, and gamma brain waves that we can enter into. And the slower our brain waves, the more propensity we are to enter into flow. If you go to Google, you can Google binaural beats. You can also Google solfeggio, SOLFEGGIO, and they will bring out very specific music that you can put into the background that can help the resonant, the frequency of your brain waves to get in sync with a flow state. And the other thing as well that you can Google is 432 frequency. One of the things that we've noticed is that 432 was the frequency years ago that all musical instruments were tuned to. But then that frequency changed to 440. So if you pick up a cello or a violin or any instrument in an orchestra, today they're tuned to 440. But in the olden days, they used to be tuned to 432, and 432 is a significant frequency in the solfeggio in the old world of music and the octaves and tonality. So some other things here just for you to be looking at. Really, really interesting. So moving on. One of Jane's earlier comments was talking about, well, actually, you know what, Mel, a little bit of stretch and, you know, can help people be in a creative state and to generate innovation. So, you know, there's kind of spectrum, and you're absolutely right. It is incredibly important for us to recognize that flow is a spectrum in and of itself. It's not you're either in or you're out. There are different levels of it that we can start to, with time, start to control and use depending on what we want to do. For deep work, yeah, we want to maybe a little bit more of macro flow, but just thinking about the different spectrum from micro to macro flow, again, really important for us to recognize. And the really important thing about spectrum is trigger, because a trigger can put you into micro or macro flow. So super, super, super important for us to understand a little bit more about triggers. We are on a public webinar, so I just want to also let everybody know that everything that we're talking about today is, granted that today's subject is a little bit peripheral, but never mind, but is all to do with modern mindset. And we absolutely believe in our work that it's modern mindset, the cultivation of a modern mindset that is required in order for us really to thrive and succeed through transformation. And the other thing as well is that every transformation has a right to be humanized, because each and every one of us has a right to be recognized and be the best that we can be within any change or transformational environment. So we also work on with practitioners and with learning and development and executive coaches and leaders on various levels of certification using modern mindset theory, which is our Dilyn Way framework and approach that allow us to support humanized transformation. We have a 2-day foundation workshop that allows you to certify in the theory. We have a 2-day workshop plus practice hours and an assignment, which allows you to bring that into the design and delivery of your work. So that's practitioner. And we also have a mentor certification that looks at how we can use modern mindset theory and humanized transformation when we're working one-to-one or one-to-few. So that is our mentor coach practitioner training. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about that for yourself or for people that you work with, then please do let me know either in the chat or after today. And also, those of you that have ever been to one of these moments know that every Thursday afternoon, I always try and block out time just to have connection with people for just pro bono. It's just paying it forward, it's just to explore you. So if you'd like to just to spend a little bit of time with me, maybe to talk a little bit more about what you've heard about today, or where you are now, where you want to go, why you can't get there, whatever that is, maybe maximizing your own current practice, I don't care. But if you want to just have a little bit of time out with me, with no strings attached, then please do, because that's really important to me. I try to have a number of hours in my week that is pro bono and always helping and pushing it out to the world. So if you want to take advantage of that, then please do. Before I go to the end of today's session, there is one other thing that I want to introduce to you all, which is this concept of coherence. We've sort of already talked about it with Jane's comment around the binaural beats. Has anybody heard about or looked at the work of the Heart Math Institute? Yeah, brilliant. Matthias and Jane, it is fantastic. Their work is absolutely, it's just brilliant. It's based on positive psychology. It is absolutely integral to flow practice. But the key thing that they do is they look at the coherent frequency of brain and heart. Now, for those of you that don't know, we have neurons, millions of neurons in our brain, in our mind, but we also have millions of neurons in our heart. We equally have millions of neurons in our stomachs. So we actually have 3 brains. And the HeartMath Institute are doing a huge amount of fantastic work around understanding what does it mean for us to really build our heart and our mind. Our Heart Math Institute work is brilliant on heart-mind coherence. And what it means is, very basically, when the rhythm of our heart, mind, and our brain mind are in sync. Why on earth am I saying this on a Wednesday morning to people talking about change and transformation? Well, I'll tell you what, it is superb work, because what it does is it allows us to build resilience. When a leader is coherent in frequency between brain and heart, they are able to respond to change. They are able to respond to all of those external conditions that happen around them. Something unexpected happens, you don't react to it when you've got heart-brain coherence. You are able to respond to it. And the difference between reaction and response is really important, because when we react, we're reacting from a point of fear, and more often than not, we're just trying to think of a pattern of the old that we can bring into play. But when we're responding, we can also actually think about something new. We can also lean into difference. Really, really important. So there's a kind of past future bit that comes into play with our decision making when we've got this heart and brain coherence. Again, what I have done is I have just popped another video for you to watch on replay here. It talks about flow and the heart-brain coherence together. And it's a really, really great, simple video, fantastic. As I've popped here in the slide, just watch it from around about 3 minutes, 29 seconds onwards. And there's some really, really good stuff in there for you to understand how you can bring flow and this concept of heart-brain coherence together. You know, again, when I was at the conference yesterday, one of the themes that we talked about when it was a conference around the future of work and the future of leadership, one theme that ran through the entire conference was this: the Great Awakening. And what we were talking about is how we are awakening to who we are as a human being. Gone are the times where we need to be a machine or a robot at work, because there are machines and robots to do that stuff. Now is the time where we want all of us in our change and transformation to support our own awakening, but also the awakening of others. What does that mean? Voicing my thoughts, being able to speak my truth, peak performance, being my best version of myself. All of this stuff is really important for us to foster and design in our work as change and transformation leaders and practitioners. So that's super important. What I've done is I've also added in here, direct from the HeartMath Institute, just some slides to show you some of the before and after tests they've done. People that are incoherent, where the brain and the heart are incoherent. And here we've got pulse and respiration, you know, the breathing, how they, all of this stuff. And then having a look at what happens afterwards, where we actually have coherence between so many different elements of breathing, of thinking, of pulse, heart rate, etc., etc. Super, super, super important stuff. And again, some more before and after. There is a gentleman that talks about flow and coherence. It's Alan Watkins. And again, I don't know how many of you have looked at any of his work online, but it's absolutely brilliant. This slide here is just here as 3 provocations for you. So take this slide And if you're working with other change agents, if you're working with a group of leaders and you're working in flow and coherence, or you want to foster flow and coherence, then what I would do is just ask these 3 questions. But Alan Watkins has got some fantastic work that is available for you to view and watch on YouTube, where he literally talks about leadership and flow, leadership and coherence in terms of decision making. And that this particular video that I'm sharing here is brilliant, because he actually gets a leader up from the audience, gets him to sit down and creates stress. He creates a stressful environment and he asks that leader to make decisions. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the result is nada, no ability to make decisions by this leader. And then what Alan does is he then creates conditions and environment for coherence, gets the leader to do some breathing, and then asks the leader to make some decisions, and the leader is instantly able to make really, really important leadership decisions. So it is an absolutely fantastic, it's an oldie but a goodie, a fantastic video to bring the concept of leadership and decision making into the frame of today's conversation. Flow, deep work, coherence, and also leadership. Super, super important for us. So I've left that there with you all. I guess for me, really, what is important to recognize is, I've got a little bit of a summary here, but the most important thing is this: every single human being that we work with is likely to have experienced flow. If we can help them to remember a time when they've been in flow, we are halfway there. Then it's about understanding and having an awareness of the real habits and rituals that people are operating with at work. So in terms of the current state of work, if we ask people what they're doing, it will likely be very different to what they really are doing. Just like the old Henry Ford, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So, you know, it's really important for us when we're thinking about bringing flow, coherence, or deep work into the design and delivery of change and transformation, to ensure that we are absolutely observing the current state of the humans within the system that are going to be at the center of change and transformation. So I've got a few things in here just for us to be thinking about, to bring kind of today's conversation to a close as a summary. But banana skins, because I love banana skins, because, you know, you've always got to, nobody wants to slip up, right? We always have a little bit of a banana skin that we have at the end of these conversations, just to make sure that it's, you know, it's something that we can keep in mind. Thinking it's too hard and not having a go at it. You know, if you are new to this and you've just thought to yourself, good God, you know, Mel's talking about this thing called flow and coherence and deep work. Listen, it's not relevant to me. It's way too hard. I'm not going to have a go at it. Please don't slip up on that thought. Just break one thing down from today and go and investigate it for yourself, because I can guarantee one step will start a journey of 1,000 steps for you. Because once you get into this stuff, you really recognize its benefit for you and people around you. And I guess the other thing as well is, if you are going to look at flow, if you are going to think about getting into group flow, really understand what the clear goal is, because that's super important. And not necessarily just thinking about an organizational vision, just thinking about what's purposeful for us here, right now. Flow state is moment by moment. It's not, you know, it's not futuristic. Flow state is here and now. What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand when getting into flow is really important, and generating the best conditions and fostering those conditions internally as well as externally for getting into flow ourselves, or equally for other people around getting into flow. So without question, really, it's about starting tiny and getting going today. So if you haven't really leaned into and explored the concept of flow, deep work, or coherence, I challenge each and every one of you to think about one of those three things and just, you know, scratch the itch a little bit and see where it goes, and start to think about how it can increase your success in the world of change and transformation. So I know we've gone over time a little bit today, but it's a massive subject and we have scratched the surface of this subject. Really just literally teased tiny little elements of it, flavors of flow. But I guess for me, it is recognizing that flow is momentary, recognizing that it is absolutely accessible for every human being, that we can use it to bring groups of people and teams into flow state, and that coherence is not a woolly wushy. It is not shamanic kind of way out there stuff. It's scientifically proven leadership competency and leadership theory that we need to bring into daily practice. So incredibly important. So those are just some thoughts to bring into today's conversation. And what I will do is say this: huge thanks for each and every one of you for sticking with me on such a massive topic, talking about flow, talking about deep work, talking about coherence. There is a lot that I've shared with you today, and I have only scratched the surface, but there's a lot of links, there's a lot of additional information in the slides that I've shared. And those of you that would like to know a little bit more, then please do be in contact with me. I've got one or 2 minutes left. So what I will like to do is just come into the round and just see anything come up for anybody, any questions that anybody would like to ask, or indeed any experiences that anybody would like to share. Tom, tidy office. Yes, indeed.
My wife often comments, "What are you trying to avoid at the moment?" Because the washing's got done, the kitchen's clean. So what are you trying to avoid? It's like, oh, well, yeah.
Procrastination. Yeah, absolutely. And those of us that have ever learned how to ski, for example, will always know that the first thing the instructor says to you is, don't look at the tree, because where you look is where you go. Yeah, it's where you focus is where your mind follows where you're looking. Claire, I've just noticed that you've asked whether that is the correct link. It absolutely is. Yeah, it really is. And one of the other things that you might want to do is you might want to go and have a look at some of the work of the Greater Good Science Center as part of Berkeley University in the US. They do some fantastic stuff around positive psychology, and really good, and that just connects it all in. Matthias, thank you so much for joining, and absolutely yes, I will make sure that those slides get sent to everybody with all of the links as well. And I also just want to say, Mozart, do you know what, really interesting that, yes, and in Japan, some of the techniques that they use for training kids to get into flow state, in order for them to become 5-year-old geniuses, a lot of the time they use Mozart's music. So it's really interesting that you've put that in, Claire.
Yeah, I for a long time, whenever I was learning a couple of years ago about a leadership program I was on about the neuroscience, really fascinated me. And for a long time, I thought, right, I need to get into classical music. I need to get into Mozart. And I just couldn't. And I was 7 months pregnant with my youngest child. And one Saturday morning, I just put it on, put Classic FM on, started clearing the island and everything. And it was just amazing. And since then, I am totally converted to the point where I have seen one of my flows now is when I'm trying to plan and prepare for, like, if it's a workshop or something where I can get psychology or neuroscience not from a neuroscientist, but from me into some of my sessions. And I have seen me in the evening, at like 9 o'clock at night, Mozart on, and just for hours plotting, and it's lovely. Yeah. So
Absolutely brilliant. You're absolutely right. Because yeah, the child genius himself is helping us all tap into our genius, isn't he? Amazing, fantastic. There we go, Andrew Huberman. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Jane. An added link. I will make sure that I'll pop that link into the slides as well. So to make sure that we've all got all of the sources for all of these links so that we can go and listen to a little bit of Mozart and go and do a little bit of deep work, understanding more about flow, coherence and deep state. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Really enjoyed today's session. Have a brilliant rest of the week. It's Wednesday. It means it's top of the week. So the rest of it should be absolutely brilliant. Make it so, and it will be. And hopefully I will see you at another one of my Wednesday sessions. Take care. And thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks for the engagement. Take care. See you all. Bye.